Hello and welcome back to Ground Level Theology. With me, as always, the co-host to Ground Level Theology, Dave. Welcome back.
Welcomed back. I am. That's the NSAB or NASB translation of my
NASB.
back welcome to be.
How many translations do you think you can name off the top of your head that you remember what it stands for?
I'm gonna go 10.
I think that's a good number. Yeah,
Like you're saying off the top of my head
yeah, off
without
the
like if
top,
I
I
had to do
think
it right now.
I think I
10.
would probably I think I'd probably say
10
seven
to
or eight
15.
just being put on the spot, you know?
Yeah. Like I know I can go Bible Gateway and be like, oh, there's 66 translations of the 66 books of the Bible.
Yeah, maybe especially
But
since
10. I say
KJV
10 to
and
15.
NKJV are different
No,
ones.
No, but like I'm just like even like, oh, this is the revised standard version. Oh,
That's true.
NRS, the new revised standard version. You know what I mean? And it's like
Right.
uh, NIV, does that count as two? Because you do you want the 1986 version or is it the new NIV? The new that new.
Well, hey, you
Anyway.
can't you can't be dead naming those translations, so
Oh no, I dead named a translation. What
Well,
is dead
that's
naming?
folks, that is a hint to what we'll be talking about for this episode. But before we dive in, I know you guys just kind of heard two episodes on AI. Maybe you're done with it, but as we had recorded that episode, new news had already come out just this last week. And so I feel like we have to almost update you on an episode that we just gave you everything about. That's how new the topic is. And so here's a couple things that came out that I just saw. One, as we were talking about how more corporations and schools and stuff are starting to implement it, I just saw a video in which someone was taking their order at a Wendy's drive-through using AI. Not that they were using AI to take the order, but that Wendy's is using AI to take down people's order from the drive-through. And so they're just saying it, and AI is integrating all of this and making the order in real time. Now, the thing that I thought was real interesting was in real time. He was saying, let me get a Baconator with extra pickles, no ketchup, all of this. And then he said at the end, you know what? Never mind, strike that, cancel that part. And it actually took it all and then erased it, so it didn't actually include in the order. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Hmm.
So I mean, we have AI starting to be integrated. At least some of these corporations are trying it out. I don't know if Wendy's actually did, or maybe it's just at that one location or something. But very interesting stuff. But the reason why we had to update this is Google Gemini, that is Google's own AI, had just dropped. And it dropped with a bombshell,
Like
folks.
it dropped.
It made waves, and I wish I can say in good ways, but it did not. Now, you guys know about AI. We told you it's a series of inputs. The people that make it are in control of that which comes out of it, right? Let's look at some of these, folks. Because people started to discover very quickly that Google Gemini was kind of weird. It was doing some pretty wonky things. So let me just bring this up for myself, and and let's see here. So here is one prompt that they had, and it said create an image of a pope. Dave, if I was to say draw a pope or think of a pope, what would you think of?
Yeah, I'm gonna think of the current pope or maybe one of the more recent popes, like in a Vatican, you know, Italian looking Roman Catholic bro. You know?
Yeah, I'd say the
Like
same. I mean, what is it like the last? I don't know how many. I just think very old,
yeah,
very wrinkly, very white, very decadent. I mean, just ornamented up the wazoo,
for sure.
right? Folks, here is what Google brought when the prompt was create an image of a pope?
Okay.
That's not like any pope I have ever seen. And for the folks on Spotify, there's an Indian woman, a very old Indian woman, and there is an African American man. Um, okay, little diverse, not exactly how we have popes, or
Hmm.
as at least as we've seen them historically, especially as of late. Maybe in the early church, I don't know. We have the Ethiopian eunuch.
Yeah, maybe the Archbishop of Canterbury, but not the Pope.
Right. Really, really not a time in which we have the ability to process photos.
Hmm.
It's been kind of white as of late.
Yeah,
Well, the
to be
second
honest.
the second prompt we have here is let's create an image of a Viking. Now, Viking, that's the Norse, right? So that's
That's like all Netherlands, bro. That is like full Anglo-Saxon. If you were ever to
well, here's what Google
see
did.
one, right?
Uh,
Oh,
so we have,
where's the beard?
yeah, not exactly of what I pictured when it came to Viking. We even have an Asian man here. Actually, I think this would be a good image for what was that man?
Like Genghis Khan?
Genghis Khan. Yeah,
Yeah, for the
it just
Mongols in
yeah,
Mongolia,
that
but
actually
not
be
a
really
Viking.
good, but not a Viking. Definitely not a Viking. So that's that's two for two. Maybe you're seeing it now. There's sort of a trend here, and then finally you might say, well, maybe if you I don't know, did like the KKK or Nazis or something, you'd get it, because maybe Google is just sort of cynical. So let's go. Yeah, what did it generate for a Nazi? Uh, Luckily we have one white person here. That's a pretty good generation of
No,
it.
no, no. I think he's Italian.
Yeah, maybe.
No, I'm just kidding. No, I think he's Jewish actually.
Well, we have one white guy, and then we have an Asian lady. We have a black man. Definitely
Oh
the
gosh.
face of the Aryan poster.
Oh no,
And
Google.
then we
Oh
have
no.
we have sort of I don't know. I'd say she looks kind of Italian. Um,
Actually, yeah, yeah.
yeah, she's
Or his
not
light
Aryan.
skinned Hispanic, like
Yeah,
Chilean,
she
Argentinian.
I think she could pass off as white, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there you have it. So
But
Google got caught red-handed with their quote-unquote woke AI generator, and this AI generator refused to generate white people.
hmm,
And this really blew up at the beginning of the week. But as we uncovered more in some AI experts, if we can call them that, because there's not a lot of information on AI, so it doesn't take a lot of information to become an expert. But there are certainly people out there that are in the intricacies. And so one guy, he managed to get behind the code, and that's by asking it certain questions and having essentially it tattletale on itself. You sort of interrogate it. And what we learned was that the Google generator, because we know that Google has fixed it this way so that it won't generate that. Apparently, what it was doing is it was rewriting your request and putting in something else. So if you wanted to say, let's say, I don't know, let's get an image of a Nazi, what he would input is something regarding the lines of diversity. So um, generate an image of a diverse Nazi.
hmm.
And so that's why it would include all these images. And so Google got caught with this, and I thought this would be a really good image because a really good update, because not only does it show that those people that are in charge of creating do in fact um, hold the knowledge and the boundaries of that which you can surf. And that can be in a good or a bad way. We talked about pedophilia and in pornography and that stuff, and how you can actually keep it from generating that stuff, or going down that lane. So here we're actually seeing it used in a DEI way, in some sense, not in
Mm,
some sense, but in a very direct sense, I mean, to correct myself, to discriminate against white people.
If you don't know what DEI stands for,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Whoa,
diversity,
is the
equity,
shoe on the
right?
other foot right now?
Yeah.
What
No,
is
no,
going
just
on?
right. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion,
That
right?
is
If,
exactly it.
if you're in the country and you live in a wonderful part of the world where people just treat you based on whether you're a nice man or woman versus a jerk, they don't have what's DEI. It's just he was nice, he wasn't nice, you know. But
Yep.
if you're not paying attention to, corporate policies and new branches of HR, um, but yeah, dude, DEI. You're now racist if you don't have a DEI department.
Yeah. Yeah. What a world we live in. So,
Correct.
folks, AI is constantly coming up. It's constantly doing new things, and it is a world that we live in that we have to sort of be integrated with and on top of. And so we did 2 episodes on it, and I just wanted to update you on that. Not spend too much time in this episode because we've already given you a lot, but I also thought, wow, quite the update already, and we just covered it. And so, yeah, I just wanted to keep you guys up to date in that sense. Keep your eyes peeled for some of that stuff. I mean, there's gonna be more, right? So Google just got caught. But what are they gonna do next? What's the next person gonna do? They got caught, but what about some of these other AIs? So definitely something very interesting in how we saw that what we were talking about in the last episode, that you can create an AI, you can have a closed system. Google did that. It's a closed system of inputs that you were allowed to do, and in fact it changed your request. So the person who generated it put in their set inputs, and now you can only generate what you have based on those set inputs that they've already generated. We covered that. We gave you the mechanism, and now we've seen Google come out with it and tweak and work that system for their discriminatory purposes. And so we get to see it, folks. So there you go. Let's move on real quick. Actually, Dave, did you wanna add anything onto that before we went on? I didn't want to go past that.
No, but I do think about how, like, you know, if you have a certain code and you have a particular algorithm where you can even humor rewriting, like, what's stopping us from rewriting history or taking out parts that
Yeah.
we don't like? Like when you Google, what was the Civil War about? And it's like, well, hey, well, don't ask Google Gemini because who knows
Yeah.
what you might get. And so it'd be
Absolutely.
interesting. Yeah, just hey, we are always, especially as Christians, we are supposed to look at the world, look at even Google Gemini through the lenses of Scripture. All
Hmm.
right, we have the Holy Spirit, we have the Word of God. So let us test every spirit, even if it's a digital one, and try to be discerning of
Yeah.
the whatever message it gives us. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And one of the things too is, when it comes to slavery and stuff, we think of slavery almost exclusively in terms of American slavery, and we're even sort of starting to
Uh,
scrub everything outside of that was slavery. So, a lot of people don't consider it PC or kosher to actually talk about slavery done in Africa or some of the other um, countries, and because in fact I think it was the Western world that was kind of the first to get rid of it. And so
mhm.
it's I would not be surprised if some of these AIs would actually scrub that from the bounds of being able to be found out, so that in the future it's almost as if slavery was exclusively a United States experiment. Um, So
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's a good
Oh
point that
man.
you brought up there. So something to keep in mind. And anyways, let's go ahead and get into the episode
Yeah.
now. And
Speaking of scripture.
so folks, this episode is going to be about dead naming, and just to kind of define this off the top, dead naming is essentially when you are using the name. Let's say you call yourself John and you find that you now want to be a Jeanette here in
Nice.
2024. To be called John now is to quote unquote dead name because that identity, that person is now dead, right? I don't identify with John, I identify with Jeanette. And so to call me John is to quote unquote dead name me. Why are we talking about this? Well, folks, this has now come to the point at which the trans community, the LGBTQ plus community, all of that has now come full circle to now attack our Christian faith as it always was going to do and use their own apologetics. So
Hmm.
let's dive into this gentleman's apologetics on dead naming and see if he has a point here. So I want you to keep an open mind on this, and I also want you to think about how you would respond as we kind of go through this together. So let me pull this up, and we'll talk to you at the end of this.
Hey, what was the name of that guy that you claimed wrote most of the New Testament?
That was Paul.
You mean Saul with an S?
Well, yeah, he was originally named Saul, but then he changed his name to Paul.
So you're telling me that you do know how to avoid dead naming people, and you do know how to refer to them by the name that they prefer. Okay, what was the name of...
Alrighty. So there you go. A very quick snippet, a very quick apologetic approach for the LGBTQ plus, and then everything else after that community. And I do want to point out that in that video there is, for my folks on Spotify, a caption at the top that says "Conversations with a transphobic Christian." So conversations with a transphobic Christian. Well, I feel like there's a lot to unpack here, and this is certainly a good video to dive off of.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
don't know.
know.
You gotta end. I don't know. End the episode because he got us, Mike. He got me. End it because
I have never been more stumped in my life,
dude. Like right when I thought speechless.
Well, there goes my PhD. I gotta abandon the faith now.
I don't know if I could be like everything. 28 years of my life, right there. 2 sentences. No,
oh man,
not even close. Not even a whiff, dude.
All right.
Not phased
so
at all.
where do we get? I don't know. Here, just some initial thoughts, just off the bat, and then we'll start to piece this apart.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. So go for it. What do you think? Just initial thoughts.
All right. Definition of terms. Okay. I want to start with the caption actually, because that's what starts the whole argument.
Yeah.
He's saying this is my conversation with a transphobic Christian.
Yep.
Or as if this is his side of the story. This is what my life is like when I'm talking with a transphobic Christian.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think I know what he means by transphobic. And it doesn't make it's like the idea of like a phobia, like as if, oh, I'm a Christian that is scared out of my mind where I can't be around someone who identifies as being a transgender person. Like, I think I can handle it.
Yeah, I have a bit of I have a phobia of heights. I can't be too high up and then away from safety to where I'm standing at the edge of a very tall building.
Right.
I have a slight arachnophobia. I don't like to be around very big spiders like tarantulas, but I wouldn't ever classify myself as phobic of trans people.
and that there might be someone. I'm not trying to say it doesn't.
I don't know, maybe. There are a lot of irrational fears out there with random, very particular
balloons.
people. Just I did actually see someone who was had a phobia of balloons, and we discovered this on a. It's just funny that you brought this up.
Sorry. Hey,
Yeah,
hey.
it's so random because there was one person on a boat as we were going to Catalina on a youth retreat, and so we were taking the kids out to Catalina for their, summer retreat. And we had a gentleman, and he was doing balloon animals because he was learning it and he wanted to do that for the kids. And so he was doing it on the boat for them as sort of fun. You could get like a balloon sword, and you guys can have lightsaber battles essentially.
Yeah. Well, it passes the time, right? You're on a
Yeah,
ferry, so
absolutely. Well, we were approached by this woman's friend, and we were told to stop making them because she had a fear of balloons.
no kidding, man. And it's like
So,
it's more loving to not make balloons.
yeah, no, so that's what we did, and we had to tell the kids, hey, if you could put them away,
Put
because
your swords away.
yeah, because a couple of them popped them, and they told them that's actually worse, because that like
I'm
sets her off.
trying to
So it's
laugh.
just like we're
I'm so
it was
sorry.
this whole thing, but yeah, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
so random, right? Okay, so maybe someone is afraid of trans people. I don't know. Maybe they had a bad experience or something, or maybe they were harmed or whatever, or whatever.
But
But
is
we're
that
talking
what
about
he
the
mean? Yeah.
term transphobic that's thrown around for the general population as all Christians are transphobic. None of us are fearing a trans person.
Yeah.
None of us
What
are
does he
afraid
mean?
of a trans person. Yeah. And what they really want to say is, and I think what they want to say is, they will first classify us as intolerant, but that's not even really what it is about, because we can tolerate trans people. It's not affirming
Yeah.
trans people. We are not transphobic. We're just non-trans affirming, right? And so that's what makes us phobic of them.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's like I'm just not gonna condone what I think the Bible condemns. That's all. And I don't think
Yeah.
I'm not better than you. It's not like, oh, my sin is somehow cleaner than your sin. It's like we all need Jesus. But
Yeah, and it's
but at the
really
same time, I'm
interesting
not gonna
too.
pretend like it's not there.
Yeah.
Like,
And
I don't know.
and even with that, it's like, we're not, it's not that we hate the person, it's that we are literally engaged now in a conversation of moral epistemology. And for the folks that
Yeah.
don't know what epistemology is, it's essentially the conversation of how we get to know truth. In simplest terms, think of truth. What is true, what is not. And so we get to this conversation of where do we get our morals from, right? Because the trans person is going to say that, hey, you are transphobic, or you're non-trans affirming, you hate me. And the Christian's going to say, I don't hate you, I just don't agree with what you're doing. And they're like, well, you would say that I shouldn't do this. I agree, you shouldn't do that. Well, here we're starting to engage in a question, right? Of not that we deny their existence or that we don't love them, but now we're engaging in a conversation where I disagree with the very thing that you are choosing to identify with and live your life. And it's not a question of whether I love you or any of that, but now it's a question of, you don't think you're doing wrong, I think you are doing wrong. I can firmly place my morality, my perspective on morality as objective on God. There's a firm foundation to derive our morality from God, even in the most simplistic way, because God said it.
Yeah.
We don't take that view, but in the most simplistic way, just to get it off the bat, we can say, well, we have objective morality because God said so. Okay, cool. But where does the trans person get their morality to say what they're doing is not wrong? Where do they get that? Where do they get off in saying that their moral view is correct, objective, and they're okay in doing that? And really, they don't have a stance on that.
Yeah. Yeah. My heart that's deceitfully wicked above all things tells me it's okay to feel this way.
Yeah, at
That's
the end
my
of the
moral.
day, yeah,
I feel it, so I do it.
It's all feeling, and that's what they'll say. I feel like a man. or
Yeah.
I feel like a woman, and therefore you must validate me. Reality takes place in the sphere of my inward perception of myself and the world.
Oh
And
man.
so it is, in some sense, a very self declaratory reality.
Yeah. Man, I feel exempt from taxes. Gosh, it's tax season. I want to get an A in every class. I want to get free Chick-fil-A for life because I
Right.
feel like it, dude.
And if you
And
don't do
like,
it, you're just transphobic.
dude, you're yeah, like food phobic. I don't know what to call you. Like I'm not on a diet. Give me my free Chick-fil-A, you
Right.
bigot. You selfish. What I don't know. Anyway, no, but this gentleman, he's up. He seems like he's trying. It's Instagram, right? He's
Mhm.
trying to. You have a 1 minute bit. You're trying to make a quick impact, and so he's like, "This is my conversation with a transphobic Christian," or how it seems to have gone for him. And so obviously, you know, if you're not with him, you're against him, and that's a threat, and that makes you an instant problem and target. And so as a presuppositionalist, it's like, great, I'm off to a wonderful start. He's not going to like anything I have to say now because he already's like, oh, you said that. I'm now, it doesn't matter what you say. I'm probably going to disagree with it. But
Yeah.
also, okay, but he's bringing up, he thinks he has a scriptural, actually, interestingly enough, he thinks he has a scriptural basis for dead naming.
Yeah, he thinks he has a really good argument on the coherence of the Christian worldview. And coherence just means that it all makes sense within itself.
Yeah, like
Um,
we're the ones contradicting. We're the
yeah,
ones contradicting scripture, actually.
we have a contradictory element within ourselves. And so he's going to confront us with the truth of our own contradictions, and then therefore we can be freed of our bigotry. Uh,
Oh, that'd be
so,
so nice to be freed of my phobias. I don't know. Maybe it says perfect love casts out all fear. Maybe, I just don't have the right love.
right. Love is love.
It is. It,
You
gosh.
know,
Yeah.
of course, love is love. It's a truism. It's literally A is A.
Did you know that wrong is wrong?
Did you know that rain is rain?
No, but I do know that the sun is sun.
Hmm.
I don't know. That doesn't really work. But I don't know. But bad is bad and good is good.
Yeah, it's
Right is right.
we can just put the name equals the name
Big is
all
big.
day.
Ground level theology is great.
I mean, yeah, those two
That
would just
doesn't
be
work,
great.
but
You know?
there's synonyms. It's ground level
But
theology. It must be great.
yeah, so let's take a look at this, Dave, and so let me just re-explain this, and then I'll just have you handle what he said. In essence, it is that Saul, the persecutor of the church, the Pharisee, the Jew, the Hebrew of Hebrews, as self-proclaimed, was persecuting the church, and then on the Damascus road, he met Christ in this fantastic visionary experience in which he got to see the literal bodily
Wow.
Christ before him,
Mm.
lost his eyesight, came back, and then as he is going around, he is now Paul. Paul the apostle, no longer Saul, but Paul the apostle who is going around delivering the message and being the great evangelist of Christianity as we know him today. Well, if we can identify Saul as apart from Paul in our biblical experience and no longer call him Saul as the persecutor that he was, then we should be able to call Jeanette and not John. And so it seems like it's a good argument if it holds up, so to speak. But I think there are definitely a lot of problems here, and Dave, I'm gonna hand this off to you to go ahead and address this. So, what do you think?
Two brief things.
Mm-hmm.
One, I think he's wrong, and I'll explain why. And two, he had two other better examples that he could have used than he did.
Yeah, that's what I
Sorry,
thought too.
I'm glad you're with me. So the first thing, right off the bat, I think he's wrong because, well, for starters, God doesn't change his gender. Paul doesn't change his gender.
Right.
Saul is, Saul, Hebrew, Paulus, Greek. He's the same person. And
Yep.
a big thing of it says Paul the apostle. He had a ministry to the Gentiles. Okay? And yeah, he wrote a majority of the New Testament. Those letters are written to Gentile like churches in Gentile regions, written in Greek. And
Yep.
so even if his buddies or his parents or his, Pharisee guys, they're still going to call him by his Hebrew name if he goes to Jerusalem. But he has dual citizenship. Okay, he's Paul of Tarsus. So he's a Pharisee, he's a Benjaminite, so he's Hebrew, he's Israeli,
Mm-hmm.
but he's also born in Tarsus, which is a Roman province. All right, so he has a Hebrew and a Greek name. You could say they're not two different names. They're his name in two different languages.
Yeah, mind you, I mean he probably used the fact that he was a Roman to get out of some of the trouble, which
Oh,
actually
a
put
ton
him
of
in
things. Yeah,
trouble.
you know that. Yeah,
So we do know that he had this dual citizenship that he
the Roman
utilized
card.
with he did use his Roman card.
Pulled it out all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a biblical fact, and I just wanted to input that as well, because I think you're just absolutely right. So go ahead, keep going.
So I do love, yeah, just like, I can be David in English, David in Spanish, uh, David also in Israeli, unless you're going to do the heart, the whole involved, the
Oh,
da,
that's the way I
Dawid.
do it.
I
Dawid,
know
man, get back
yeah,
into
got
the
the
like
lift.
the oldest
Yeah,
way.
with yeah, uh, the oldest, but it's still my name.
Hmm.
Uh, like, and I know they're talking to me about me. It's not like, oh, I'm sorry, you're dead naming me because I come back to America from a missions trip in, a Spanish speaking country. It's like, oh, no, 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 you can't call me David ever again. It's David now. Like, that just doesn't, it's who I'm talking to and where I'm talking. So that's number one.
Oh,
And that
I just wanted to interject a
he didn't
quick
change his
story here
gender.
because this is really funny. I mean, you
Oh,
have David and David,
you're
but
right.
one of the times that I had something that's very similar to this, there's a friend of mine that I had in high school. His name was Miguel. We all called him Miguel, and we
Oh,
were
yeah.
we were all really good friends. And he was a lot older than I was, but he was also really tall. And I'm a 6 foot guy at the time. He was something like 6'4", 6'5", so he definitely stood above everyone else. And I'd been with him for a few years, and finally, we had gone over to his house. I'd been over to his house multiple times before, but usually not around his parents or anything. But his parents happened to come out, and they were talking to him, and they called him Michael. And I just, what?
That's
Michael?
not your name.
That's
That's
not your
my name, you
name.
weirdo.
And then that's when he pointed out, he's like,
Loser.
my name is Michael. It's Michael or Miguel. It depends on the context. Is it a Spanish concept? And so
Duh.
he had just introduced his name as Miguel to us, and we continue to call him that. But he was literally Miguel and Michael. It's the same name in a
Yeah.
different translation, so to speak. And that's sort of what we have going on here with Saul and Paulos. I mean, he had his Jewish name like after King Saul. It's a very strong, good Jewish name. And then we had Paulos, which is a Greek name, and his context, he switched from Michael to Miguel, or Saul to Paul, depending on the context. And so uh, they're both his name. They're both identified as him, and he was using both. And so yeah, absolutely. I just had that story because it was right there, and it's such a good, like, it really did stump me, because I mean, not stump me, but it really did shock me, because I was like, wait, hold on, I've been with you all these years. Your
Yeah.
name is really Michael? Yeah, it's really Michael.
Well, was that before you knew the Lord, or do you know the Lord?
Oh yeah. That's
Like
what it
no,
was. It was the transition, right? No.
yeah. And so like, there's two things I've like because it's like it's not like a pre-conversion Paul and then a post-conversion Paul.
Good
And then
point.
I want to hit on this too. Well, let's say there is. He didn't bring this up, but there is a pre-conversion. I would argue. Well, I don't even know. This isn't even pre-conversion, post-conversion either. Abram to Abraham,
Yeah.
because God makes a covenant with Abram, and then renames him.
Yeah.
But he still makes the covenant with him while he's Abram, and then goes, well, because we made a covenant, I'm gonna call you like Abraham
Yeah.
now. But even then, you're still the same person, and it's not like if someone, or what if they just called him Abe? Like you can still call him Abe, you know?
Or
Uh,
another one is Cephas versus Peter.
oh, exactly.
Same thing.
Or Jacob when he wrestles with the angel of the Lord, and now he's Israel,
So that one,
Israel,
I think that's the strongest one. And you were
or a
talking
post
about it earlier.
conversion,
There's
pre and
there's
post. Yeah,
better examples of it that he could have gone to, but it feels like he
some
chose the
biblical scholar.
weakest one.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, dude. Like we're
Yeah.
trying to build the straw man. We're trying to build the Iron Man, the strong man for you.
Yeah,
And
he
and
had
sorry,
he
dude.
had a tin man and he had a straw man, and what he chose was to use the straw man.
Yeah, 100%. And I would even,
So,
Jacob, I think, he knew the Lord. You could argue, like, hey, this is when he really, especially
mhm.
the way his relationships are reconciled to a degree with his brother and with his wives. He has his 12 sons. Uh, but it's interesting that pre conversion, post conversion, let's say they are different names. Let's even humor it for a second, Mike.
Mhm.
Did they stop being men? Like, is
No,
this a change of persons, even though
right.
there is it, or a change in their core identity? Maybe in a way, but did it
Mhm.
reshape everything? Did it like they didn't stop being men? No.
Yeah. I think that's a good distinction too, because we shouldn't lose sight of the argument. Yes, is about dead naming, but the name is not just arbitrary naming, right? It's not like I want to be called John when I was born Mike, right? And then you just met me later and you learned that my name used to be Mike, but now it's legally John, right?
Right.
We do that because you can legally change your name. What we have a problem with, and the actual topic of discussion in what we're addressing and what we have in contention, is whether you can change your identity completely so as to the extent of changing your biological sex,
Yeah.
your gender, right? That you have gone from woman to man. And that is what we vehemently disagree with. And the name is only consequential in its affirmation of the transition from
Mm.
one gender to the other. So you cannot be a John to a Jeanette.
All right.
But if you wanted to be a John to a Mike, right? Because you don't like the name, or I don't know, like movie stars change their name so it sounds more radio ready, or to be said smoother, or something like
Mark Twain.
Richie Valens, even
Yeah.
Ricardo
Yeah.
Valenzuela. It's Richie just sounded better. Richie Valens flowed off the tongue better. Those things are okay, but the affirmation that someone can choose a different gender and identify and be a different gender, that's just not it. That's just that we can't affirm that at all. And
Mm.
so I think you're absolutely right in that you've been tying it to that. I mean, the subject is not just using one name over another, which is the case that he's trying to build. And so, folks, for those at home that don't really see the move that's happening, and I'm really glad you brought this up, because I never really thought to kind of tie these. I thought to kind of address these in different different parts, but you did. I don't know. I really like your approach that you just took, and this is why different
We work
minds
together.
bring in different perspectives. As you tied this together, is really just that this person is beginning to set up what is called a false parallel. This is a fallacy, a logical fallacy in philosophy, logic, or apologetics. They're all kind of integrated. And it's a false parallel because going from one name to another, like Richie Valens to Ricardo Valenzuela to Richie Valens, is not the same as to saying that I'm going from John to Jeanette. One person is the same name. He's going to a shorter form and to create a new image for himself. So we might even call it a different name because it certainly is less syllables. And then the other one is to so radically change your entire being, right? Not just your entire being from who you are as a character, but who you are in gender and sex. And I'm tying gender and sex together. I know some people would disagree with that, but at this point, the conversation has been so meshed that I think the conversation in the LGBT subject has actually gone to the point of biology and gender as well, because now they're starting to push against biology.
Yeah, well, because then, when you're like, I can be a woman, but you don't know what a lady is. Or like, you have all that.
Because now they're
But
starting to say that it's not just chromosomal, right? Gender isn't chromosomes.
it's hard.
Biology can be denied. And in fact, men can have babies because now they're trying to figure out how to do womb transplants. So there's a lot going on there. I sort of did a master's thesis on transgenderism. The paper that I wrote, even I want to say maybe 6 years ago, might as well be in the Stone Ages by comparison to all the development that's happened since then. And so there really has been a lot. And so that's sort of what's happening right now, and where they're trying to go into that, and so that men can actually literally give birth and conceive and all of that stuff. So that's what I'm saying. I'm actually including sex in there. I know it's biological, but I do think that is the current state of contention. So false parallel. Both of those, even if Saul and Paul was true, we're saying we're granting it. So we're building up that steel man because he chose the straw man. Let's say it's the Jacob and Israel thing. False parallel. This is not the same argument. This is not someone who is being renamed, taking on a different name, as we just said a lot of people do in their legal name. What we are in contention with, and what he's trying to parallel, so we jump onto the train with him, is to say that just as this is this line, so is it to this line, right?
Yeah.
And they're just not, because they really are two completely different things. One is one person affirmed in his gender, taking on a different name so he could step up into a different role, and that is elevated into a new position, is as a more noble person that he is, and typically that name identifies him in such a role. Abram to Abraham, not just father but father of many. Woman to Eve, that is the mother of all. And then Pebble to Petros, the stone, the boulder. And then I think I don't know, that's sort of the best ones I could think of off the top of my head. Not that sort of thing, but someone going from, Paul to Sarah. We don't have that. Never in the Bible do we have that, or is it ever even affirmed that such a thing could ever happen? To the contrary, we have the opposite. I think it was Cyprian of I don't even remember where he's from, but I think it was Cyprian actually condemned an early church leader in the church because he was an actor. in these Roman plays, and such a person would actually live sort of a licentiously sexual lifestyle and portray himself
Yeah,
as a
cross-dress.
woman on a
Mhm.
play. And he said such a person should be condemned for his actions, because that sort of set a bad message for the church and for the people at large. And so he instructed the church to actually take him down off the elder board, and actually bring him under church
Anathematized?
discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if he got
I don't know if it went
anathematized,
as far as
but
anathema, but I think there was
yeah,
a curse. I just don't want to go as far as to say that if I don't remember. So certainly church
sure.
discipline. And I think he left
Mm,
open, like, hey, if he would just turn, he could be obviously put back in. But from
definitely.
the earliest church fathers, we have the condemnation. If you don't accept scripture, if you don't accept Leviticus, if you don't accept Jesus' affirmation that marriage is between a man and a woman, as it was in Genesis, if you don't accept Paul in the earliest writings of the early church, I'm saying that as one sentence, Paul is the earliest writings we have in the New Testament. If you don't accept if you don't accept the Gospels and the later writings, that is the later epistles, then even the earliest church, such as Cyprian, is still coming down not only on the affirmation that marriage is between a man and a woman, but that we are not to be cross-dressing, and that we are not to be associating ourselves as the opposite gender. We are to be in the image of God and our created body as he created them. God did not make a mistake when he placed us in our body, that is this imager in this body. I am a man not because I choose to be, not because I identify as such, but because the Lord chose me to be as such.
Mm,
The Lord could have chosen me to be a girl, and if he did, I would have been a girl. Today, I would have been a girl from conception on to
yeah,
now.
Michaela.
Yeah, but I am not, and that is the Lord's decision.
Yep.
That I was going to be born a man, and here I am today, and I am enjoying that, and I find enjoyment, and I find my purpose when I live in alignment with his will. And so that is not to say I reject my manliness, if I can say that. That sounds kind of weird saying, but if I reject that purpose that he has for me and take on my own purpose, then that's actually a rejection of God and his will for me. So
Ooh, bad. Not good. Wouldn't
false
recommend.
parallels is what I'm saying. All that to say, completely false parallels, and I'm really glad, Dave, that you kind of pointed out that those two are connected.
Well,
Um,
definitely. Like,
yeah.
well, because like, and I even like, I kind of want to go with the extreme. Like, what
Hmm.
if his name's Paul, and he decides to go by Sarah?
Yeah.
There's no example of him changing genders
Right.
or sex, however you want to define it. Like, I need like all this guy showed me. He feels like he dropped the bomb on us, and that's why I was like
Yeah.
making jokes about it. But all he
Right.
gave me was an example of a name change, not a sex change.
Right.
And there's no nowhere in the Bible. There's eunuchs. That's also not a sex change.
Yeah.
That's castration. All right.
And
Um,
like
they
almost
didn't want
never
to become
according
women.
to what
Yeah,
they wanted.
yeah, it was definitely against their will.
Yeah, they didn't really
100%.
have anesthesia at that time. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they didn't want that. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I much rather like to humor the conversation. Can you prove to me why? I think it's the same person, and you use both names interchangeably. But hey, person, I don't know your name. Let's say he did do that. Can you tell me where in the passage that or his history that proves that he wanted to be a woman? That he
yeah.
was a man, that he was a woman stuck in a man's body, and so he thought the best way to show the world that he really, was instead of being called the masculine Saul, was to be called the masculine Paulus.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't really work, and he's trying to make oh, if you can do name changes, then you should condone and affirm sex changes. And it's like, no. Like,
No.
if I had a guy who was John and he wanted to go by Jeanette, I'd be like, I don't know why, but like, you're still a
Yeah.
dude. And
Yeah.
so, I bring all that up because then now we have, I'm trying to not to confuse our listeners where what we're dealing with now is what, what this guy meant by transphobic. What does this guy really mean by dead naming?
Yeah.
Because you're asking me, would I be afraid of, calling someone their new name as opposed to their old name? Like, I don't mind doing that. Like, to a certain degree, if yeah, oh, your name is Michael, but you go by Miguel. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I'll call you Miguel.
Right.
That's all good. Yeah, yeah, sure. Oh, but what you mean by dead naming is that this is the name that you were born with because you're a boy, and then now you want me to call you the name you rather be called because you want to be affirmed as a lady. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. That's not a reality I want to
Yeah.
live in with you because that's not reality.
Yeah.
And it's not kind and it's not loving if I were to like, and I'm ranting now, but you're talking to a dude that has soon to be 2-year-old triplet boys where it's fun when we're looking at planes in the sky and we're playing and we're
I mean, have
roaring
they
like,
chosen their gender yet, or?
nope, but no, see, we wanted to do a gender reveal, but we figured why bother when, we'll find out when they're 16.
Right.
No, well, yeah, we did a gender reveal because we knew what they were.
Yeah,
And that's why
and
we gave
when
them
did you
boy
do that
names.
gender reveal?
Oh, yeah, that was at second trimester. That was,
Like they weren't
10,
even
12
born
weeks.
yet, and we
No, not
already
even. Yeah.
knew their gender. Not
Yeah.
even taking their first breath. And gender
100%. Yeah.
is already part of their identity. I saw a pro-life documentary this last week by Living Waters. They just came out called What Is It? Great documentary. Go ahead,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
free. Go over there, watch it. It's awesome. But I mean, this is just radical. Before they can utter their first breath, to even take their first breath, or even get into like real complex consciousness, their identity is already literally being molded within them. And gender, sex, is the first thing, is the first part of their identity that is given to them.
Yeah. And
I mean,
they
it's
can
so
even, oh
radical to
gosh,
think. Like
like,
before
oh,
you're
it's so good.
allergic, before you get a name, right? Dead
Yeah.
naming, before you even get a name, you get a gender.
Yeah. You really do. And they do like studies like we couldn't do this because we had triplets. We had three. But if you're having one child, like they can they can test the mother's blood because of the blood type. Or they can trace the chromosome, or even if you're a lady and you give birth to a son,
Hmm.
you'll have the Y chromosomes of the boy you carried in your brain forever. So
Oh wow.
even though you are a woman and you don't have a Y chromosome, okay, you have it in your brain because of you were raising a boy and you're growing a baby boy in your uterus. And so it implants yourself in your brain. That's why you have that connection between a mom and a son
Hmm.
where just like that motherly love, not mama's boy thing, but more like the motherly instinct of until you find another lady to kind of watch over you and care for you in life in marriage. That's why your mom will always have like your back.
Yeah.
It's a mental thing. It really is, like, it completely rewires a brain. That's also why I don't get offended when my boys they don't love my wife more than me, but they are naturally drawn to her and she's drawn to them. And so I say all
For
that because
now,
that's like,
until
yeah.
wrestling is possible,
Oh,
right?
wrestling's already possible, buddy. We
Oh man.
wrestle. All that oxytocin gets released before bedtime.
Well, wait
Uh,
till they're old enough to jump off the couch and give you the elbows off the top row.
They are, dude. It's scary. 2 years old. Like,
That's so funny.
Dude, I was changing Barrett and Dawson jumped on my back, and that is not fun.
Oh
Changing a diaper
man,
with
that
another
is
kid, body
awesome.
slamming you. It is great. Right off the couch, didn't even think twice about it. He knew he could land on me. Oh
You
gosh,
better
but
start lifting weights, my guy, because you're
dude, push-ups
outnumbered.
to get on my back, dude. To get on my back, I'll do some push-ups. But I say all that, right? Like,
Hmm.
that weren't born. All those things, and
Yeah.
I also knew. Me and Amber knew what we wanted to name them before they were born too. We didn't have to like, well, I don't know. Let me get a good look at them, and then
Yeah.
we'll figure it out. Like, and it actually was a relief to us because we had to pick 3 names. So he was like, I need to know if 2 boys, 1 girl, 3 girls, 2 boys. Like, I need to know
Well,
what
that's
would,
kind of nice because I
But
mean, it's like, well, I'm stuck between these 2 names. It's like, well, you just got to come up with a third now.
yeah, exactly. It's like you gotta make sure it's as good as the first 2. But
Yeah.
all that to say, like, they are boys,
Yeah.
not even because they were born boys, but they were conceived and grew into boys, and
Yeah.
then they were born as
Right.
boys. They weren't born into boys; they were born as boys.
Hmm.
I'm not trying to make all the word salad,
Right.
but
No, but
really,
it's
like,
true. I mean,
and I gave them the name that I gave them, and that's just my particular kids. And let's we have nicknames for them already. My name's David, but you call me Dave. It's not like, oh, you're
yeah.
dead naming me at all. And especially if I preferred to go by Dave or something as opposed to David. Uh,
Hmm.
but it's not. There's no. I really can't think of an example in the Bible like this guy's trying to do. Of, hey, this gentleman going by a different name, Sarai to Sarah, going by a different name. That means they changed their sex
Yeah.
and their gender, because that's what this guy's like trying to do. He thinks he got us because, like, they changed their name, which means like you should be affirming someone that wants to change their sex, and
Yeah.
that's the false parallel that you brought up.
And the
It's not
challenge
don't work.
also is like you need to not only do that, but you need to do that in a context in which it's affirming that change as well, right?
Right,
Because
right,
some people, they come to the Bible without any sort of notion of how to read it. So they think they
true.
come to a passage that's going to be condemned later, right? So a person does such action, 2 verses or 2 chapters later, God says, because you did this, now I'm going to wipe you all out, right? But they find that first part and they say, oh, this says this in the Bible, so that means God's okay with it. It's like, no, it's not. You need to know context. You're
Yeah.
reading this, you're in the middle of this story in which a bad person does a bad thing, and you're over here jumping in the middle saying that's what the Bible condones,
It's like that one
right?
card. It's like the one card that quotes Satan.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
remember? Like that was a couple episodes ago from it was last season. But it was
Yeah.
just like, hey, look at this kind, get well soon card that quotes the lie of Satan. It's in the
Yeah.
Bible, must be true.
Uh,
It's historically accurate. But
it
anyway,
and people do that, right? And so
yeah.
you not only have the challenge of showing that it needs to be from one sex to the other, and it needs to be in an affirming manner, right?
Yeah, who
So
said?
it's a high ask, and I can tell the gentleman, if you're listening to this, which I highly doubt, but if you are, it, actually do bother, because then you will have read through the entire Bible. I was gonna say don't bother because it's not in there. I can save you time, but maybe do bother, and then you will have read the entire Bible and said it's not in there, and hopefully you come to Christ by the time you get to the end of one of the Gospels. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's just not in there, and never will it affirm, because in our theology, God just does not make mistakes. Your name is one of the first things that's given you, apart from you being able to identify yourself, and that's part of the framework. I mean, uh, Adam
Mhm.
is molded from the ground, and he is given life, and he is named Adam, which is man. And then, as he is to name all the animals, which is part of his dominion and work, from his side, a woman is crafted and brought to him to be named. So not only is Adam given his name, the repetition of that image is also being regenerated here as Adam gives woman her name, which is woman. Man gives the name to this new creation, woman, as in a from men. In that sort of wordplay is actually in the Hebrew as well as from Is. I mean, Is being man from Is. Esau was developed, was created.
So beautiful.
So you have, from man, woman was created. And so both of the first pair did not get to name themselves. They did not get to self-identify. God made them. And woman wasn't called woman as in identify. I mean, she was identified as woman, but she was a woman biologically when presented to Adam as his counterpoint, as his helper, and was identified as such as woman. Something completely different from what he was, because if she was the exact same, then they wouldn't be able to procreate, and the same problem would continue on. So this instance of looking for something to essentially get a gotcha on Christians, we just don't affirm that. It's not going to be in the text. You're not going to find it in Christian theology, because we have a coherent worldview that continues on. And so we are wonderfully created. And we are wonderfully created in the image of God, male or female. And the existence of intersex people is an anomaly, is not the natural, right? Things that go awry in the birth and the development process are not the normative. That's why we have the category of intersex as a medical condition, not as a normalcy, because we recognize that this is a derivation of normalcy, not a poster of a spectrum, so to speak. And so I also reject that argument that intersex people prove that a binary doesn't exist. It actually proves that a binary does exist, and that there are unfortunate I don't want to say malfunctions, but that's sort of the best term I can come up with in the process at times.
Yeah, distortion.
Yeah, something along those lines. I mean, they're still human. They're still awesome people. It's very rare, and even far more rare are the categories that they would like, as in like gonadal. Dysgenesis is extremely rare, but that's typically what people want to picture when they talk about intersex, and that is extremely rare. Most of the ones that are being cited as being common are typically just hormonal. You get some hormones and you fix the problem. Nothing looks wrong if you were to look at them. None of the components look wrong. Yeah, that's it's a little bit of the science section of that paper.
Yeah, but it's I'm thinking here. So like, this ended up being a little. This wasn't an episode on transgenderism,
right,
or transphobia, but that was the caption: conversations with a transphobic Christian. So I need we need to bring that up, and I think we've been able to show like, hey, this guy thinks he has us. I don't think he has a strong man argument. It doesn't really work. But you and I, talked about before the episode, and it's something that we should bring up, even though it's false. Because I really do think it's false. I think all the scriptural evidence is against him and in our favor on this issue. That he's equating a name change to a sex change. But let's say we know it's false. As pastors, as Christians, is it, if we're, we think about evangelism, or we're trying to win someone over to Christ, we're trying to love people say, love the person, hate, don't hate the sinner, hate the sin.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so where do we find that line? Is it hateful to the person if we dead name?
Hmm.
Or to ask the question again, even if we don't condone the person, a man wanting to become a woman, are we allowed, or should it be encouraged that we use their preferred name, Jeanette over John,
Hmm.
as long as we don't condone that, they can't really change their sex? And I guess you could even,
Yeah.
this is a big question, like even pronouns at that point too. Because
Yeah. Let's throw that in there.
use your name, why wouldn't I be able to humor, you being a, she, they, it, or
Yeah.
something?
I mean, those definitely go hand in hand, and I'll answer it this way, and you can just negate
Oh, I'll
everything I said
riff.
if you wanted, or you can
Negate.
agree,
Wow.
or
I'll
you can
detonate you.
rebuke me, whatever.
Yeah.
Because we have different perspectives on something, so you might come in at a
Sure.
different angle, and
Yeah.
so I always love it when we show different perspectives, like different evangelical standpoints, and though
Mm-hmm.
they're not the same, we can be, elbow to elbow with each other and affirm each other's stances as brothers in Christ. And so that's why I always say that as a caveat. You can negate.
Oh, yeah, I
You don't
got you.
have to
Yeah.
jump on.
Yeah. 100%. Don't worry, I love to.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start it with this sort of story when I was with Ratio Christi. Not that this is part of their organization and I'm promoting it. Maybe I shouldn't even mentioned it, but I was a vice president of the club at Moody, and I was doing a lecture on that paper that I was writing, and so I did one on transgenderism. And it was an apologetic approach to transgenderism, and it was sort of a buzz on campus, and so a lot of people came. And this was actually one of the biggest questions. What do we do with pronouns? Because at that point in time, pronouns were sort of a new thing. Should we take them on and all of that stuff? And there was this one woman in the crowd, and she stood up at the end of the Q&A, and I was just being bombarded with these. And she said,
Oh yeah.
yeah, you were there. And
I remember. Yep. I'm sorry. I'm your
and
best
she
buddy.
said,
I could not be there.
yeah, and she said, the Lord created everything through his word. Ex nihilo. It was by his word that he brings things into existence. And in the same way, we as image
Right.
bearers, we bring out reality by our words. And so by not affirming it, we're essentially killing, we're not affirming that we are not being loving in not using pronouns, and our words are so impactful in that sense. How do we not use their preferred pronouns? Because she was saying this in the form of, you should be doing it. She was commending it forward. I realized the way that I just said it and the inflection of my voice kind of sounded it like she was being sincere. She wasn't. She was attacking. So she was just sort of saying that you should be using it because your words are so powerful as God has created the universe. And so our words carry that sort of meaning of creation and stuff. And I responded, I said, well, the Lord does create with his word, but he never spoke a lie.
Boom.
And it did have that sort of ripple effect throughout the crowd. And it was just like, it sort of was a gotcha moment, but it's the truth. Is the validity of that statement. I was sort of jumping back onto the analogy with her. She wanted to say that we should be affirming because of how powerful our words are, the ability to create and all of that. But the one notion that we don't have in that account is that that God is affirming a lie, that he is telling the mountains to be sea, right? We don't have that. He's telling the sea to bring up the mountains, right? And so he's not calling a mountain a sea, or a sea a mountain, or he's not calling a bird a cow. He is speaking truth. He is creating truth with his words, and they are the affirmation of that which is reality. So the same way too is that our words should not be something that draws into lies, into sin, but should be an affirmation of reality, which is truth. And so I was really trying to show that the using the pronouns is an affirmation of a lie which puts us into sin. And that is something we need to repent of. And so we can't affirm pronouns, and we can't affirm someone's quote unquote new name. But here's where it starts to get a little bit gray, and here's where the same thing I said then is sort of the same thing I do now. I'm gonna let you choose in the moment. I said it back then, and I'll say this now. It's up to the evangelist. In the moment, in the conversation, is it something that needs to be addressed in that moment, or can we, for the sake of the conversation, play niceties and present the gospel so that we can win, so to speak, win the previous battle? If I bring them to Christ, they will reaffirm their identity as they were created. And so if someone says, hey, I am David, and they're clearly not, I'm going to say, oh, okay, Dave, what do you think about this? Do you think you're a good person? Take them through the way of master and all of this stuff. And then by the end of it, they will have come to the Lord, and now under the Lord, and now that the Lord is indeed their Lord, the one who establishes dominance and is Savior over them and guides their life, and is their master, and we are all, we all look towards our Lord, Savior, Master, and Creator. Will now need to align their life with that Creator. And that will be to be in the image that he created them. And so that's sort of an evangelistic decision that needs to be made. He could say, no, I'm not going to do that. And then the conversation gets shut down. And that's perfectly valid too. But what I warned even back then, and I do warn now, is that to affirm someone's delusion, which is what I think it is, you're sort of affirming the world view. And so if you're saying, okay, I affirm this part, I do think that you're a David, but here's the gospel, right? And then they become a Christian transgendered person. And then after some time, you now say, hey, I know you identify as David, but that's not what God created you as. I need you to switch. And then they're like, whoa, where's this coming from? You have been affirming me this whole time, and now you've been a hypocritical backstabber. You are a hypocrite and all this other stuff. And it's like you have now surprised them. You have now impressed upon them something that you should have done at the start, right? And so I said, it's up to the evangelist. I'm going to let you guys feel it out. I'm going to let you make decisions that you need to on the fly, because I don't know what the correct answer is going to be in any given moment. But I am going to say that if you're going to want to play I'm going to be their friend first, that they might feel like you were sort of a ninja hypocrite that sprang that upon them, and you've been affirming them the whole time. And that's a far more awkward conversation than being upfront at the start and saying, hey, I'm sorry, but that's just not what I believe. Because that's what they're saying. Yeah. I believe I'm a woman. Can you affirm me? I'm sorry. That's not what I believe. You have your belief. I have mine. You want me to respect yours. I want you to respect mine. Here we are at a stalemate. You want me to call you this. I don't want to call you that. Is it okay if we continue this conversation? And so when we get into more like work related or legal related, I just call the person their name, their like legal name, or I refer to them as their last name, whatever it is, anything to get away from pronouns. Because if, let's say I'm working in an office job or something, and they say, oh, by the way, this person, something Smith, right? Uh, um, or wants to be referred to as she, her, or they, them. We'll say they, them, because then I don't have to choose a gender. Well, I could just say, well, Smith said this, and Smith, emailed me the papers. Well, are you gonna refer to them as their pronouns? I don't need to. I can just say Smith. Smith is their last name. And I can't get into trouble for that because I'm using their name. I don't have to use pronouns in my speech. And so if you need to avoid that in a very legal work-like setting, I just say do that, honestly.
Nice. No, that's when you just pray you're talking to someone named Taylor. Okay? You just pray, please be Taylor. Please be Taylor. I can't go wrong with Taylor.
But Dave, what do you think? I mean, what do you think of that whole thing? Do you agree? Do you have a different perspective, or do you just completely negate the whole thing?
Yeah, I would like to reaffirm
Alrighty.
what you've said, and I would like just to emphasize what you've said from a different angle, or just just to build upon what you've already said. Of going back to the example of, I remember seeing that young lady and just trying to listen to her, and great response on the fly, because you never know what you might get asked or what you're going to get or how they're going to respond, and you're addressing her question, but she's not the only listener. Yeah. And so it's tough when you're in that environment. But I don't know.
That felt like a hot seat that night.
Well, but it's interesting, kind of like she almost she didn't equate us to God, but it's like what she wanted us to do with our words. Oh goodness, I'm going in and out.
Oh no.
It's okay. I just I budged my cord. Anyway, you don't need to see me for this. You just need to listen. Spotify's like, that's what we do all the time. We're good. We're thankful for it. But she literally wanted us to do what God does with His word, and not speak a lie, but literally create ex nihilo out of our words. You want me to speak something that doesn't exist into existence. Yeah. You want me to say, yeah, you're a woman when you're not. And it's not like, oh, hey, it's a dude named Taylor and there's ladies named Taylor also. Okay, this is you purposely changed your name because you're transitioning, and you changed your name because of your sex. You purposely chose. You didn't choose a new masculine name. You chose an effeminate name because you want to be a lady. And so it's like, I'm not going to speak something that doesn't exist into existence. I'm not going to say, hey, this is who you are now. It's like, no, this is what your parents named you. If you want a name change, that's fine, but I can't just pretend like you're a dude that's going to suddenly be a lady. I cannot affirm that sin. All right, and names are powerful. I know that from the Hebrew Bible. Nowadays people name kids because it sounds cool, but not necessarily because oh, this name means blank. My firstborn son is Eleazar because God is his help. That's what that name means. Yeah. And also, he was one of the mighty men of David, and he's my firstborn son. He's my big guy. But Dawson also means son of David. So there's a lot of Dawsons, but I don't know a lot of Dawsons where their dad's name is David. But anyway, there's meaning behind their names. Barrett is cool too. Strength of a bear.
Yeah, you chose some good names, man.
That was.
They were strong names.
Amber helped. She was really good with that. but they had a name, and so even if they didn't want to change their sex, if they wanted to change their name down the line, I try not to be too hurt, but I would be hurt because I had a reason. Yeah. For naming them what I did, and I say and now not everyone has that crazy story, but if your name is Jonathan, which also means something in Hebrew. But or you're just the Mike, or you're just the Dave, or the Mark, or whatever. Your parents had a reason for naming you that. including your sex. Not just because of your sex, I hope not, but because of your sex as well.
Yeah.
Because they're like, well, they're a boy, they're a girl, so we're going to give them a boy name
Yeah.
or a girl name.
It's
And
an
so, yeah,
affirmation of that reality, right?
and
That
yeah,
that reality has now, in some sense, limited the scope of the naming process. Now you can name anything, right? So there's still that
sure.
infiniteness, but that infiniteness is going to be in the reaffirmation of that identity, that they
Yeah.
are indeed male
And then
or female.
right. And then I have one last thing, because I also know there will be a day, at least for Christians, in a new heaven and a new earth,
Hmm.
where we know that we are given a name, or of course that we don't even know, that our Lord knows.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know if it's David or not. Maybe it is still David because it's a cool name and it's biblical, and I hope I'm living. David Elijah, a pretty cool, full name, very biblical.
Yeah, I hope it's not
Uh,
something too long, the new name, because I'd like something for a
face
keychain, you
tat,
know?
no, like a face tat, dude. It's just like arc over my head, just the whole face. No, but even
Right.
then, like, it's not like I'm gonna get to heaven, and then enjoy the new heaven and new earth, and like totally forget maybe that like my name used to be David. Like that's not dead naming. We even
Yeah.
learned that like, hey, we're going to be able to sit with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Or that
Yeah.
when Peter could say, hey, when Jesus was transfigured, we saw Moses and Elijah. And it's not like they're going to be like, oh, you're dead naming me because I'm not on earth anymore. And I'm like, and no, because that's their name. And so it's one of those things where if I probably wouldn't use their names to answer that question.
Right.
Dead name. I wouldn't want to use their new name. I would use their original names. And it's one of those things where we got to find the balance. Maybe I shouldn't be offended that you want to go by that, but you shouldn't be offended if I don't
Yeah.
go by it. Can we just like meet in the middle ever?
Yeah. And I
I
just
don't
think
know.
like sometimes
Oh,
it gets, yeah, like you can skirt it kind of quickly of like, hey,
dude,
I
just
like being
kidding.
called a dude. It's like, all right,
Yeah,
whatever, dude, for the sake of this
bro.
conversation, all right, now let's get into apologetics.
Right, right.
And that's why I say it's up to the evangelist in the moment. I don't know what it's feeling like in that moment, and so I'm very cautious
Just
to
say like, yeah,
yeah,
no,
to be
never.
very
Okay,
dogmatic on a formula for every single given
sure.
scenario. But like we just affirmed,
Personally, I won't. Yeah.
yeah, like
Personally, my
I
opinion
would
as being,
definitely stray away from that most of the time.
yeah, it, yeah. I have, and maybe someone else can talk. I have, in the long run, I haven't seen it work out
Yeah,
without like some sense of betrayal as well.
and
Where it's
that's
just
the
like,
thing.
well, and
Huge.
where's the line, right? When do you stop affirming?
Yeah, like
Eventually,
when you've been a friend to a homosexual person for 10 years, and then now all of a sudden now I want to share the gospel with them and tell them that it's not okay to live their lifestyle. How much betrayal are they going to feel when they've said for 10 years you've been okay with them and now all of a sudden you're not okay with who they are? It's like maybe you should have done that off the start.
and and sometimes it's and it and I don't want to like just like how we have bad, people that make Christians look bad. You have folks that are, yeah, I mean, practicing, and I don't want to point the finger just because they sin differently than I do,
Hmm.
but I don't want to pretend like it's not a sin. But there are folks in that community that make other folks in that community look bad because they're just like, you might have a dude that's just like, yes, I'm attracted to men. I'm not trying to be as fanatic as that. I'm just trying to live my life, man. And, I still go by my name. It's Chuck or whatever, Charles,
Yeah.
and I just like dudes or whatever. And and I don't think that's okay, but like at least, they're not trying to like,
Yeah.
and how, not trying to go by a different name. They're not, uh, the same reason, but at the same time, they're not going to pretend like they don't have the views that they have. And
Mhm.
and there's actually this is boots on the ground, grassroots.
Yeah.
I'd say the average person though, it prefers to have you be upfront and be like,
Yeah.
hey, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I think we're going to disagree, but I do promise that what you see is what you get. And so
Right.
we're probably going to
Absolutely.
disagree. I'm probably not going to affirm things, but you're going to know, like, hey, what you see is what you get. That Dave is at least being honest with me. He's being genuine and authentic with me. I can be genuine and authentic with him. The fact that, and to remind people that you can have those conversations, that like you don't have to completely go down the checklist and agree 100% with everything to just to be able to talk about the weather.
Yeah.
Like goodness, it's like and so I'm trying to. That was like a deeper way to kind of like close out this.
Yeah. It's
Chris, do we
we
pick and choose dead naming? No, we don't pick and we don't pick and choose dead naming, at least according to the video, because
Yeah.
that his definition of dead naming is not.
Yeah.
It
And dead
doesn't fit.
naming in
But
general is just not something that I mean we're not about affirming the validity that someone can be a completely different person of the opposite sex. Like
yeah,
we'll never do that. It's just not a reality. It's not biological. It's not scientific, and it's not biblical.
mm.
And so we don't do that. And so we don't know how to properly not dead name a person. That's kind of felt like a bunch of double negatives. But we do know how to affirm the reality of a person, right? And so that looks different. So yeah, what we saw here was an apologetic issue, and it was a good issue to talk about, especially in terms of as that topic becomes more and more prevalent. I mean, it's already super prevalent. It's in our school systems. It's being taught by elementary school people and stuff. We're fighting the fight on all fronts. But it's a healthy discussion, and even as it's engaging our apologetic side now, we're seeing that hey, people are trying to make arguments. They're really terrible arguments, but they're arguments nonetheless that need to go addressed. And so I think this was a really good kind of dive point to get into the conversation that we did. I feel like we had a really stimulating and robust conversation on the topic. I mean, we sort of almost had a 2 episode thing on
Sorry,
dead naming, but
not
also
sorry.
transgenderism, because we kind of
Yeah,
got to field that a little bit. And I'm sure maybe in the future, if people really enjoyed this, we could even do a whole transgenderism episode. But I feel like we did a pretty good job with this, and even so, this is running a little bit long, but we also had an AI update. So this is definitely an action-packed episode. We really hope you enjoyed this. We really enjoy this. So folks, don't forget to share it with everyone, because it really helps us get the word out. It really helps us be able to speak some good theology to people and get them to grow in Christ more and more. And so we want people to get a seminary education for $0. And we just see this podcast as a way to address theology and bring it down to the ground level, which is what seminaries do. Well, seminaries like to take us and bring us up to the Ivy League tower. But we're trying to bring these towers down to the ground level for you, and we're doing this one topic at a time. And so we're also just speaking into the culture itself. And so we would really appreciate if you like that, which helps these videos come up when people search for stuff related. Really helps us when you share them yourself. And then don't forget to subscribe so that when these videos do drop every Wednesday at uh, 5 o'clock, I believe.
yeah. 5 Pacific,
um,
eight Eastern, 5
yeah.
Pacific.
That you get a notification, so don't forget to hit that bell too. And we just really appreciate you guys. at the end of the day, we enjoy having these conversations with you, and we also really enjoy the feedback. We love having these conversations. I know my wife is someone that listens to this podcast as well, and we always really enjoy having a conversation on the topic after. So these podcasts are even conversation starters to be had with your friends, family, and loved ones of what did you think of this podcast? Yeah, I thought, and then so we really just enjoy your feedback, and we really enjoy having conversations with you guys about these topics. So all this to say is we're gonna see you guys in the next one, okay?
I swear, I promise, and I'll still be David the next time you see me.